Hi, I'm Josh Eagle, joined by my colleagues Ed Brandyberry and Josh Mills. Welcome to another episode of Inside the Humidor. We're coming to you from the Smokestack Everything Tobacco in Moon Township, Pennsylvania. On the last episode, when we left off, we talked about a little bit about why cigars. Why cigars, some cutting, some lighting techniques, and how we all got into the hobby. And on this installment, we're going to talk a little bit about brands. We're going to do a specific brand to start, and it's Perdomo Cigars. We're going to tell you a little bit about the history, a little bit about the blends, and a little bit about a trip to Nicaragua that we've all taken and they just recently got back from, so that should be a lot of fun. Perdomo Cigars. It's a Nicaraguan-based company. It's completely vertical. By vertical, I mean they do everything from growing tobacco, from seed to stock, to cut and dry. They also make their own boxes. I think the only thing they don't do at their factory is make the bands. It was started by Nick Perdomo in Miami in the 90s. They now have an 1,100-acre farm. Nick has hundreds of employees that grow and ferment the tobacco from seed to cigar. Ed, why are we going to talk about Perdomo Cigars? We know that's your favorite brand, so
well,
wear the hat proud.
I'm a little prejudiced. I wear the hat, wear the shirt. Nick Perdomo is an American success story. He is in a lineage of tobacco people. His grandfather and his father both ran important plants, H. Upman and Cifuentes, in Cuba. Then Nick, who was born in America, was in the Navy, served our country there as an air traffic controller, became an air traffic controller in civilian life in Miami International Airport, and wanted to go to his roots. He wanted to grow cigars. And quite honestly, by his own admission, all he knew was he loved smoking cigars. But with the help of his father, he began the company in 1992. He grew to, in 2000, employing 2,000 people by 2010, actually, 3,000 people today. Nick Perdomo, I think no one could make a better cigar as far as paying attention to the quality of seed he uses. They've invented machines and processes that we've seen, all of us have seen, that actually sorts through the seed so that there's minimal interaction, minimal handling by individuals in the seed planting process, but more importantly, what the seed yields, great cigars.
Yeah, we've all seen the greenhouses that they have. They actually use one seed at a time. Now, a cigar seed is actually about the size of the end of a pencil, if you can imagine that. And how many seeds fit inside of like a Coke bottle cap, guys?
Thousands.
Thousands of seeds will actually fit inside of a bottle cap on your standard soda bottle. You get tens of thousands of seeds. And he actually has a machine that separates these machines, and they plant them one at a time, believe it or not. He used to have people actually wet the end of a pencil and pick up one seed at a time. This was someone's job, was to pick up one seed at a time and plant it inside of a little germination pot so they could grow one seed at a time to prevent some cross-germination of the seed. So Nick Perdomo takes a ton of care, and we'll talk more about that in your guys' experience just most recently in Nicaragua with Nick and his attention to detail. But if we're bringing up a cigar brand, there's a ton of brands in every cigar shop you'll go into. And brand loyalty and brand recognition are a major part of the cigar industry. From the elaborate box designs, from the elaborate designs of the bands on each individual cigar, those are all reasons to draw your eye in. So what's not to like about Perdomo?
Well, one of the things I would use to describe Nick Perdomo is that he's a traditionalist. He doesn't make any Lanceros, for example. He doesn't think they sell. If you're looking for, a lot of the tobaccos being used in today's blends, they actually use these different funky new tobaccos coming out. So if you like the taste of the Peruvian and the Brazilian and the Colombian tobacco, you're not going to find that in any of Nick's cigars. He also doesn't make a single cigar that's an absolute powerhouse, knock you on your butt, blast of nicotine. He doesn't think those are marketable, and he doesn't like making those. Another thing he doesn't do is he doesn't make huge ring gauge cigars. So I think we were saying the biggest cigar he makes is a 7 by 60, so 7-inch by 60 ring gauge. There's cigars in the market that exceed 80 ring gauge and plus, and a lot of guys really like those. So if you're looking for either Lanceros or ultra big cigars, if you're looking for these new crazy blends of tobacco that are becoming popular, if you're looking for a full-bodied cigar that's going to, punch in the mouth with nicotine, you're not going to find that in any of Nick's blends.
That's because Nick wants a cigar that you could smoke every day. He doesn't want to make a cigar that you could pick up, other than the addition to Silvio, which is limited only by price, but probably his best cigar, and I think one of the best cigars on the market. I think comparable to the finest Padrones and the finest Davidoffs. Maybe that's my own prejudice. I'm not afraid to admit it.
It is, yeah. No, but it's a fantastic cigar.
Yeah.
And what I will say, though, is, and, Nick might not like to admit it, but I'm thinking that it has something to do with the Cuban roots, because you get a lot of that in the Cuban cigar industry. They're not trying to revolutionize the cigar industry in Cuba. They're trying to maintain something you can smoke every day, and Nick's followed that path to make a cigar that you can smoke every day, that sticks along that medium profile. He also makes a mild cigar, and also makes something with some fuller body and some more flavor to it, but none of it is a gimmick. I think that's what you're trying to get at, the gimmick of the cigar.
Yeah.
Which some of the large gauge cigars, they look like exploding cigars, and they could give you lockjaw. But those cigars, they only come from certain brands. They're not the traditionalists aren't making. The Fuenteses aren't making an 880. You know what I mean? They're not doing it.
No, and that traditional flavor, if you will, the old Cuban style cigar, is reflected in the tobaccos he grows in Nicaragua. He uses Criollo 98, which is a Cuban seed, and Corojo 99, another Cuban seed. So the Criollo and the Corojo are the mainstay of the Perdomo cigar.
And he buys very little tobacco, right?
Right, only his Ecuadorian Connecticut seed.
Connecticut, the Connecticut wrapper out there, it's a lighter shade wrapper. It needs some elasticity and needs to be thin. The Nicaraguan soil actually doesn't allow that cigar wrapper to be thin enough to actually become a wrapper. The soil is actually too rich in Nicaragua, and they're growing it in Ecuador and in Connecticut in the United States. So that's where we're getting that Connecticut. He's getting his specifically from Ecuador.
From Ecuador, that's correct.
And that's a cost thing, I'm sure. The Connecticut tobacco.
He also feels that you get a better flavor profile from the Ecuadorian Connecticut. He doesn't believe you get some of the bitterness that you get from an American Connecticut seed, and that you'll get more of the creamy aspects of a Connecticut wrapper from his cigars because they're Ecuadorian.
And he also likes to keep his cigars talking all vertical. When you're going to a brand, Nick Perdomo across the board actually has relatively inexpensive cigars compared to the rest of the market share.
He just implemented, as everyone does, he just implemented a price increase that actually returns the reserve line, the 10 or the champagne line that everyone would know, to the prices it was years ago. So, I mean, it's now, he dropped the prices, now he's raised it up, and it's only at the price that it was probably a decade ago.
And that's pretty amazing coming, not taking the price increases, because most cigars do take a price increase every single year that we've been in it.
And he eats the import tax, 100%.
And the reason, like we talked about briefly, was market share. I think Nick wants to sell more cigars in the market at less margin than sell less cigars at higher margin. He wants to be in there as a recognizable brand. And in the 20 years he's been doing this, he has developed that reputation to be a cigar manufacturer that's here for the long haul. Because some of these are come and go, and Nick's starting in his garage with one bale of tobacco, and he'll tell you the story, jumping up and down on it like Rocky.
Right, when he bought his first one, He was so excited because he'd been buying portions of bales, certain pounds or however he was buying it. When he finally was making enough cigars that he was able to buy a full bale of tobacco. He was so excited. He had his picture taken with that bale of tobacco, and now you go into his warehouse, and maybe we're not allowed to say this. He has a shitload of tobacco. I don't know.
There's definitely that. If it's a metric shit ton, actually. But the Perdomo tour in general is a great time. These guys just got back from the 80-degree weather. You can tell by their lovely suntans. Not really, actually, but
We weren't there long enough.
They weren't there. 4-day trip in Nicaragua. Josh is going to tell us a little bit about the operations and what he saw in Nicaragua and just how interesting a trip that is. And I've been told from a lot of people in the industry that Nick Perdomo's tour is the premier tour for information.
Right.
It might not be the party train.
No.
The Esteli, there's some great stuff that goes on with some of
If
these
you
other
want to write
tours.
graffiti on a building, you go on someone else's tour.
That's a good one.
If you want to drink and party most of the time,
And-
there are other companies that are.
And there's nothing
cater
wrong
to
with that, but
no,
it's just not the tour for you.
no.
But if you want to learn something about cigars, Nick Perdomo, industry across the industry standards, owners, manufacturers, representatives, they'll all say the same thing.
Right.
But Nick Perdomo is the most information you will receive. So if anyone wants to go to Nicaragua, we can get you in touch with Juan. He can send you down on a tour next year. They're January, February, I believe.
Right.
And lots of fun. Josh, tell me a little bit about the operations in Nick Perdomo and what he took you through in your time down there in Nicaragua.
So when you first sit down, to let you know how really nitty-gritty into the information you get on that tour, the first thing you do is you sit down under these tents and he talks to you for probably about 25 minutes about the soil that he uses. He contracts with Bayer and some other biochemists and stuff, and he gets these crazy things into his soil that help get them the nutrients that the tobacco plant needs. But what I was most impressed with down there was we keep saying vertical integration was it's truly vertically integrated. I mean everything from contracting out to get that soil in there, and then they bring it in and they use different things to augment the soil as well, and then they go out and they plant it, and you can go see their 1,100 acres of farmland. They have curing barns right on site next to a lot of the farms, so they cure the tobacco there, and then they bring it back in and they go through all the fermentation and aging processes, just all the way up through the rollers, and then they have machines in there. He rolls his own cellophane. Just the box making plant they have there, they have their own lumber yards. They bring the boxes in. They've got printing presses to put the artwork on there. There's ladies in there painting. On the addition to Silvio box and on the coffins, there's a woman that's in there that they have the wax seals on there, the legit wax seals. So she goes in there and hand does all those. So just the attention to detail and the sheer, like Josh said, the only thing that they do is they contract out for his bands because they don't have an entire print shop. But besides that, everything from the cellophane to the box to the seed to everything else comes from Nick Perdomo's facilities.
And to the band point, there's only about one company here in the U.S., and they are the premier band printer. And they do actually most of the bands that you'll see on cigars. But talk a little bit, what was the most impressive thing you saw was it the fields? I loved the greenhouses personally. I just thought that the fact that the greenhouse was so large with these little tobacco seeds that you knew were going to turn into a cigar one day was the most impressive. The box factory was probably the most fun, seeing an actual log break down into the box that you see right here.
Right.
He actually has a blind kid. Is he still employed there?
Yep,
Oh, yeah.
yep. He has, actually, I guess he employs over a half a dozen blind people in his operation. Some of them are involved in the sorting of the leaves, so that they're actually, because of their sense of touch, they can actually tell the difference between the thickness of leaves and what kind of quality leaf it'll be. And then the fellow, like you mentioned in the box plant, or really the box finishing area, this fellow can actually feel the imperfections in a box, and he has very, very fine sandpaper that he applies by hand, and he's taking that around to make sure that box is as smooth as it can be inside.
So Nick is an employer in Nicaragua. These guys, if anyone's ever been to Nicaragua or to any third world country, the conditions for work really aren't optimal. And Nick Perdomo has a facility with 3,000 employees.
3,000 employees.
They are working hard. There's no such thing as a hour break, and they get paid.
Well, for lunch.
Yeah, for lunch.
Everyone leaves Everyone, they can either eat at the canteen that they have there, or they go and find their own lunch or bring their lunch.
So they do get an hour?
Yeah, they
That's
get an
good.
hour. They get an
How
hour.
long is the work
They
day?
can take a break during the day if they want to.
But they get paid per.
They get paid by. He knows that most of his rollers, as an example, can produce in excess of 500 cigars a day.
All made by hand.
All made by hand. If you can imagine that, that's if in an 8-hour day, 500 cigars. That's a lot of cigars an hour, and he gives them the goal 450 because he wants them to concentrate on the quality of the cigar. You can do 50 more. You're not allowed to leave till 5 o'clock.
Absolutely. But do you get paid for the extras if you do over 450?
I'm not sure. I
No.
think
No, you do
No,
not.
that's one thing he said. He doesn't want to give any incentive to rush the production. So you hit 450, and that's what you get paid for. One interesting thing he did say, though, is they can smoke however much they want.
Right.
So, and they'll actually pay you for the cigars that you rolled, or that you actually smoked yourself. So if you smoke 450 cigars, or if you that's absolutely insane. If
That's a good
roll
day.
450 cigars and you roll
Aristide
5
might do
more,
that.
he comes close. But no, if you roll 455 cigars and you smoke 5 of them, you get paid for those cigars because he wants the rollers in there to experience the product. He said that if they ever, they draw test every cigar. They said if ever one of the cigars has ever come back from the draw machine plugged or whatever, a lot of times they'll actually deconstruct the cigar and re-roll it. But he said sometimes they'll actually have them smoke that cigar, so you can say, see what a crappy experience this is smoking this cigar. This is what you're doing when you roll it improperly. So he really wants his guys to experience the product and be familiar with it and see what it's like when it's good and see what it's like when it's not so good.
By draw test, though, and out in TV land, draw testing, we talked last week about the draw. That's the amount of smoke and air that goes through the cigar.
Right, how smoothly.
They actually have this little machine that they put on there, and you actually can test how much air is going through.
Mm-hmm.
And like Josh said, if it does not get the proper amount in Nick Perdomo's factory, you will either smoke it yourself or you will unroll it, be charged for the wrapper, and re-roll it again.
Right.
But what I wanted to talk about was the working conditions. Nick actually provides what would be considered high-end working conditions.
Right.
And this is my favorite story from the trip last year. We're in a curing barn. Now, a curing barn is where they hang the finger or hands of tobacco that go up into the rafters to ferment. They get it dry. That's the first step in the fermentation process. From a green leaf to a brown leaf is going to be in one of these drying barns. So women sew these tobacco leaves together in hands, so the tobacco leaves kind of look like this, and they put it on a large pole. So this entire pole will be filled up with this tobacco, and it needs to get 40 feet in the air. There will be a series of gentlemen that stand on eucalyptus. Eucalyptus limbs. I mean, you're talking just a grid of eucalyptus. We don't have. There's no safety harnesses,
No.
and there's no hard hats,
and no lost work because of it.
And there's the beauty of it. When you hand it up to one guy and he hands it to the next guy, and all of a sudden there's 2 guys standing on a piece of eucalyptus 40 feet in the air. A couple people in the crowd said, well, they don't have any kind of safety equipment. And how many times do you have somebody fall? And he says, never.
Right.
You know why they don't have anybody fall, he says? He says because they don't want to get hurt.
Yeah.
Because getting hurt sucks.
Just common sense.
Yeah, and if you get hurt and can't work, you can't get money.
Right.
If you can't get money, you starve. They don't pay you to be off of work,
No.
and then you don't get hurt. It's really a crazy
and
concept.
Yet, we learned this trip that the equivalent pay of a roller working for him is like a $48,000 a year income in our country. I mean, it doesn't seem like $400 a month is a lot, because that's what in Nicaraguan dollars or Cordobas that it is. But the buying power, I mean, you can rent a place for $45 a month in Nicaragua.
Yeah.
Okay? So, other than your utilities, especially your electric, which not everyone has, you are earning, if you're an experienced roller with Nick Perdomo, you're earning the equivalent of making $48,000 a year here.
And that'd be a good pay. And you have $500 in your wallet, Nicaraguan money.
Right.
Balling.
It's not worth much. $2 US.
Hey,
No, $20.
20. That's a $20 bill.
$20 US.
Unless you're American, though, I have to preface that because $3 for a beer is for some reason $3 Nicaraguan and $3 American. I'm not sure how that works out because I think I just paid $600 for a beer.
Yeah. That's the way they get you sometimes. Yeah.
But I did get bottle service. Another one of the trip stories with back to the beer. They had a sign that said premium beer, all you can drink premium beer, $10, right? $8, all you can drink premium beer. So like, oh man, they got to have some really good beers in here. You know, all you drink. The name of the beer is actually premium.
Yeah, that was
it's like the biggest garbage beer they have in Nicaragua, premium beer. I like that one a lot. Ed, what are some of the thoughts? What's the biggest takeaway for you in the Perdomo tour when you get to go down there? What do you enjoy the most?
Wow, that's hard question for me. I think two things hit me. Number one, Nick's passion for his product and Nick's appreciation of his people. He said he couldn't do it without his people. He can't make those millions of cigars a year.
He can't make $1 million on his own?
No, I don't think so. And he really appreciates them. You know, you think of Silvio, who takes care of agricultural production for him. Came to him as a young man still in high school, sweeping floors. He showed incentive. Nick sent him to university. Now he's one of the top agriculturalists in Central America. What do you say about that? That's taking care of your employees. And to me, that means something. We've all worked for people who don't take care of their employees.
You're absolutely right.
Not you.
I know Josh doesn't care about that. What'd you take away from that?
No, mine actually piggybacks off Ed's a little bit, just because not his appreciation for the people, but the team that he's put together down there. Some of the greatest minds in the tobacco world. There's one gentleman named Aristides Garcia. I've never met somebody that could talk to me for 10 minutes in a different language, and I would understand not a single word that he said. And I just love the guy. He's incredible. He's so passionate about what he does, and it comes through. He's 85 or 86 years old, and he's been in the industry for 75 years. So he's one of the finest minds in the tobacco, and is exactly what he's doing. He runs up the fermenting and aging processes there. And then also Silvio, the guy we met, he runs up the agricultural side of it. And then before he passed, Nick's father, Nick started the company on his own, and then after so many years, his father came to work with him and kind of pass on some of that knowledge and make sure he was probably doing everything right. So the team that he put together there is some of the, some guys from Cuba, some guys born in Nicaragua, whatever, but some of the most knowledgeable and most well-trained guys in the tobacco world.
Yeah, the one story, did Aristides show you? This guy, not to get too technical, but a pilon is where you're going to ferment tobacco. And it's basically a giant square of tobacco. And how it ferments is through pressure and heat. Right. And how you gain pressure and heat is the top of the tobacco presses down on the bottom.
And it's natural.
It's natural. Heat generates...
No extra weights on top, no extra heat added to it. And he tears it apart.
Yeah.
He doesn't just flip the bale over. He flips, the top becomes the bottom, the insides become the outsides.
And that's exactly where I was going.
And
this isn't something that's the size of this table. This is something the size of a truck bed. You actually have to take it and rotate it because that heat and pressure, the bottom is what's fermenting the fastest, so you need to rotate that.
Right.
And Aristides is actually able to stick his hand in the middle of a pilon and be within like 1 degree of temperature. I mean, that's pretty amazing. You've been doing it an awful long time. They'll stick the thermometers in, and he'll be within, tenths of a degree. And he's what, 90? How old is he?
No, he's 85 or 86, something like that.
85, 86.
75 years
and
of one
smokes
profession.
20 cigars a day.
Mm-hmm.
We won't mention what else he says is good for a long life, but anyhow.
It's allegedly in Cuban cigars, right?
Right.
All right. Ed.
Well, Aristides was the head of Cuban agricultural. Well, when that was his job in Cuba. He was in charge of all the agricultural production in Cuba, and he says today the best tobacco that's being grown is being grown in Nicaragua, and he could say that because he works for Perdomo, but I think he really believes it. I think with the passion that he says it and how he says it.
Well, I don't think he was going to let it be any other way.
No.
You know, Nick was a kid. This guy's 85 years
Yeah.
old. If you don't think that Senior and Aristides had a say in how this was going to go,
Oh,
and
sure.
that's why I think Nick is so appreciative of his people, because he actually has people that are, 40 years as Senior,
Yeah.
working and developing his tobacco,
Right.
and making it what he says would be the best in the world. Some of the brands that he has and some of the blends, if you can go over some of those, Ed, because we want to talk a little bit about branding. And when people come into a store, we want to tell them what Perdomo is going to be good for you.
Right. His most popular line is this line that was originally called 10th Anniversary Champagne. He's renamed it Champagne Reserve, but it's his most popular line. It's been his most popular line probably since he introduced it. It's a mild to medium cigar, except for the Maduro. The Maduro will kick it up a couple notches. The Sun-Grown, which is normally less than a Connecticut, greater than a Connecticut, is actually less in this line. So if you want the mildest, one of Nick's mildest cigars, you probably want to smoke the Sun-Grown or the Connecticut in the Champagne Reserve. He also has some other great lines. It's called the Habano. The interesting thing I find is that in regards to the lines that he's making, he is not afraid to wrap these in different wrappers. A lot of manufacturers, you get it in one wrapper. You get a Sumatra wrapper, or you get this. Of course, they can do that because they're buying. They're buying their tobacco. They don't have the control over their tobacco that Nick has. He sees it from the beginning, from the seed all the way up. So he's able to know what he can put together. He has. We talk about innovation. We'll see how innovation happens because they're working on a craft series, which is the brainchild of his vice president, Arthur Kemper, who loves craft beers. And they're going to be brewing. They're going to be making
Brewing a cigar.
Be brewing it. No, they're going to be making cigars that go with different craft beers. Now, I think that's thinking out of the box a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think they have that. But
And we'll talk about his new lines coming out in a bit. But what do you
Yeah.
think? So we have the Champagne, Ed.
Right.
This is going to be tried and true. And you said it's the most popular one, and it's mild. That doesn't surprise me, guys. Mild cigars across the market are able to be. They have different appreciations
Right.
for a mild cigar. You're going to have a new smoker. And actually, when we opened up here, one of my favorite cigars to get a new smoker into was the Perdomo in this 10th anniversary series.
Right.
It's a great cigar. It's not offensive. It's great for the golf course.
It's not a true mild.
No, it has flavor.
It has flavor. It's more of a mild to medium. Even I smoked a Nick Sticks, which is probably one of his least expensive box cigars, before the show, and that was a flavorful cigar. And it's once again a mild to medium cigar.
So in price, he has Nick Sticks, then he goes to the Lot 23. Talk a little bit about Lot 23.
Lot
Where'd that come
23
from?
is really an interesting thing because normally you wouldn't think you'd be able to make a cigar all from tobacco in one field. And that's what he did in Lot 23. He took all the tobacco, other than his Connecticut wrapper on the Connecticut version of it, all the tobacco comes from one field, which is an incredible blending.
Well, absolutely, because you're not getting much profile. And if you can actually get some, a taste out of the
Right.
same field, I mean,
Right.
that's a real
Right.
innovative move. Did you guys
And
get
it's
to go to
all
Lot
out-
23 this
all out
time?
of Estill.
No, we went to
Oh,
his
yeah.
newest field this time.
No, you didn't go to Lot 23 this time.
We
huh?
didn't go to Lot 23. We went to a new field he has in Volcano.
Well, that's probably more impressive than Lot 23.
Yeah.
Pretty freaking cool. is what it
But then
was.
you go up from there. You talked about a little bit of the Habano line. He has a Corojo and a Maduro
Yeah,
wrapper.
the Habano line is one of my favorites. Usually has some good pepper notes to it. So if you like spicy food, you ought to head for the Habano line or the 20th anniversary. Both of them have some good pepper hits.
And that's
to
one
it,
of the newer
And you have the
releases.
pepper through that.
He had to wait 20 years for that cigar to call it the 20th anniversary.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
You have to be in business that long.
Right. But they're very, very fine. He has a lot of sizes in his lines. We don't carry them all, but if you want, you can get them.
He makes a fantastic figurado. The torpedo and the pyramid are really nice looking.
No one
They take
makes
lot
a
of
better
care.
looking torpedo
No,
than he
absolutely not. And the 20th anniversary really shows that off.
Right.
So he also has another line, though, the Grand Cru, which is what I have here. It's more of a medium cigar, medium plus. His sun-grown wrapper, you would think most sun-grown wrappers pack a little bit more of the peppery punch. Nick's sun-grown wrappers stay really leathery, cashew. I get a little tiny dash of white pepper, but I love medium and flavorful cigars. So the sun-grown Perdomo Grand Cru, and they also bring this in other wrappers as well. You have the Connecticut, and you also have the Maduro.
You won't get the pepper hit that you get with the Habano line.
No.
In the Grand Cru.
Absolutely not. You're going to smoke more medium across the board on,
Right.
the on the Grand Cru line. The newest cigars that are coming out, maybe some innovation. Ed talked a little bit about the craft series. What did you get to smoke in Nicaragua that might be coming on the future?
Well, we got to smoke it's called the small batch. And what he did, one of the cigars we didn't mention is which we don't have here yet, is the vintage 12-year double-aged. That's a cigar. All the tobacco's been aged for 10 years, and then what he does is he puts them in bourbon barrels, and all the tobacco goes into bourbon barrels, and it ages for an additional 2 years. And that allows it to reach a higher heat, and the alcohol residue in there doesn't create a bourbon-type infusion. You won't smoke that cigar and get anything that reminds you of bourbon, but it just helps ferment it and helps it to age for longer than it would just in the Polones we were talking about. So what he did with the small batch is he took all the tobacco from the vintage 12-year, he aged the wrapper for the additional 2 years in the bourbon barrels, and the rest of the tobacco is just a 10-year aging without the bourbon barrel additional aging. So he creates we smoked a half Corona, and it was phenomenal. Really, really tasty. It's little size, I don't know, was it 42 by 5 or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's what's amazing to me is what the price is supposed to be on these. I mean, you're talking about tobacco that's been aged 10 years, and then you put a double-aged wrapper on it and charge $5. I mean,
yeah, he keeps his price points down. Keeps the price points down. You can do that when you're vertical. If anybody knows anything about business out there, if you do everything and buy nothing, you have the ability to keep that price down. Especially,
and have no debt.
Yeah, and have no debt.
That's very rare in this industry.
Yeah, that's to start from zero, though.
Yeah.
Nowadays you couldn't do that.
No.
You couldn't get into the cigar industry like he got into the cigar industry. In the early 90s, that was the time, and he was at the right place at the right time, and he made that work out.
I think so.
So the double aged, we have that additional aging in the bourbon barrels. A bourbon barrel, why they use that so frequently in a lot of industries, it's a very breathable barrel, and it allows that air to come in there, but it doesn't allow molding. If you're airtight, you're going to get some molding and some mold resistance. Those barrels breathe, and that's why Scotch goes in it. Yeah, and the charred oak actually allows it, and it doesn't. You don't really take on the flavor. That's why Scotch is even fermented in bourbon barrels, because it doesn't transfer the flavors, like another barrel would do. Like you couldn't put it in a rum barrel or a wine, barrel. It would be.
Some people try.
Yeah,
and he said for the burban barrels, the reason he uses it is, one, it's a very specific variety of French oak, which, like he said, breathes very easily, and two, to call it bourbon, you can only use that barrel one time. So you'll see them use the barrel. You can't reuse that barrel for bourbon. They'll sell that barrel then to Scotch makers or craft beer makers, or in this case cigar manufacturers, and so they'll use that barrel that's only been used once with the char oak, and then it's a specific French oak that allows it to breathe like that.
Yep, and that's the only reason they can use that barrel is exactly what you said. In the bourbon industry, you only can use it one time, or it's not classified as bourbon, or you can't do it properly. So
that double age is going to be coming out again in not too long, and if you ever get your hands on one, I mean, it's one of the most incredible smokes out there.
And what's he have? 3 wrappers on that as well?
3 wrappers on that.
Well, sun-grown Maduro.
I mean,
Connecticut.
you smoked the Connecticut, and
I'm not even a huge Connecticut fan, but I like that a lot.
It was one of the best you'd ever smoked.
No, absolutely one of the best Connecticut's I've ever had. Had some flavor, had some punch.
Yeah.
So, Josh, what's your favorite Perdomo cigar if you had to pick one?
My favorite Perdomo cigar is going to be the Addition to Silvio Double Corona.
Which I'm smoking.
What he's smoking. I'll be a little bit pricey at $22.
Yeah, something like that.
$22. So not my everyday smoke, but not by any stretch of the imagination. But like Ed was saying earlier, I'll put it up against any of the finest Davidoffs, any of the finest Padrones. It's just a really intricate, complex. Definitely not a cigar to smoke on the golf course, because when you age the tobaccos like that, you get this, it mellows out the flavor. It's not going to be an in-your-face smoke, but there's tons of complexity, tons of taste in there. And if you have an appreciation for what he did with that cigar, it's really easy to like.
And that's a tip for out there. When you smoke a cigar outdoors in the wind, that actually changes the flavor. And that's actually the worst place to smoke a cigar. There's always wind here in Pennsylvania, so the best place to smoke a cigar, especially if you get an expensive cigar, will be indoors, so you can get all the little nuances. Ed, what's your favorite of the Perdomo line?
I have a hard time deciding between the double-aged vintage 12-year, either in the sun-grown or the Maduro. I like the Connecticut too, but the sun-grown and the Maduro are just fantastic. And then this Edition de Silvio. Edition de Silvio, like Josh said, is the kind of cigar you're going to smoke every day. I know guys come in our shop and they get that as a celebratory cigar. Some guys have a little more expendable money and they smoke it a little more often. But the Edition de Silvio and the double-aged vintage 12-year.
And that'll become, when's the next release of that? That'll be coming out. You can find it in your local shop.
Late March.
March, you said.
Late March. So, which wrapper's coming out first? Did they give you that information?
No, they didn't tell me. But if they follow the pattern, they'll probably roll out the Connecticut, and then about 3 months, 2-3 months later, they'll roll out the sun-grown, and a couple months later, they'll roll out the Maduro. And then once they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah.
Until next year. So it's not like they have. It's not a regular production cigar.
And that's another thing that
takes
Nick
a long
does.
time to
Right,
make.
right. That's another thing that Nick does, and maybe does it better and less misleading than any other cigar manufacturer out there. Is if he puts double aged on there, and if he puts what year it came from. Like in this particular cigar, which is my favorite one, which is the Grand Cru. This is the crop of 2006.
Yeah.
When this tobacco is gone, the 2006 will be removed. It'll be the same blend, but it won't be the same crop. So he will remove the band, remove the date from the tag, so it doesn't mislead the customer.
Right.
And the 10th anniversary, what's he changing it to?
He just changed it to Reserve Champagne because he didn't want the anniversary. I think he didn't want the anniversary name mixed up with the 20th anniversary.
Well, also that, and yeah, and that cigar debuted for his 10th anniversary, and that was one specific cigar for a specific time period, and he's going to drop the notation of the 10th anniversary to make it less misleading. But this is the same types of tobaccos we've been growing the whole time.
Right.
But it's not the same exact tobacco you smoked the first time we came out with it.
Every year you have a new crop.
Every year you have a new
That's
crop.
why, it's amazing that these blenders, whether it's Nick or someone else, that they can take a cigar that's in regular production and it has different tobaccos year after year. I mean, it's the same formula. But let's face it, you're growing another leaf every year.
Right.
And the
Customer put it best. On March 18th last year, it was 20 degrees colder than March 18th this year. That's going to have some effect on the plant, so you're actually going to get a different experience. It's amazing they keep it so similar year after year.
Year after year.
Well, that's about all the time we have. We're going to move on. I want to get your final thoughts, guys, on what you think about Perdomo, and just give some closing thoughts on getting into the store and what would you buy and what would you like about Perdomo.
I think, generally speaking, you can find a cigar to match about any palate in the Perdomo line. You won't find something in a Sumatra wrapper or a Mexican wrapper, but you're going to find great Cuban seed, Corojo, Criollo cigars. You'll also have great Connecticut's. He has one Cameroon, which will also be available. And I don't know, it's just, to me, you can find something in Nick's line that will match any palate.
Well, from the Perdomo guru and the obvious bandwagon fan, we're going to move on. Josh, if someone was coming into the store today and recommend a cigar for the novice all the way up to the advanced smoker, what would they like?
So if you're a newer smoker or you're a more experienced smoker and you're looking for something that you can still get something out of, I would go to the 10th anniversary of the Reserve Champagne line. We talked about, in this case, the Connecticut wrapper being a mild to medium and the sun-grown being a little closer to the mild. So that would be one. It's not going to be intimidating. It's not going to get anybody sick, but it's still going to be a nice experience with lots of flavor. If you've been smoking a little while longer, you want something a little more kick to it, I would look to the 20th anniversary line. Lots of flavor, lots of kind of in your face, not necessarily in your face, but peppery notes. There's a lot going on, a lot to taste. And if you've been smoking a while and you've got an appreciation for cigars or for what they are, maybe a little bit more refined palate, I would look for the vintage 12-year, maybe the addition to Silvio as something you can get a lot of complexity out of and certainly a lot to taste in there.
We appreciate it very much you joining us on Inside the Humidor. I'm Josh Eagle for Ed Brandyberry and Josh Mills. Why don't you go out there and burn one?
Thank you for tuning in for this episode of Inside the Humidor. We hope that you'll come inside the Humidor and see Josh and myself. We're here to help you select cigars, whether it be Perdomo or any of the other 720 cigars that we carry here at the Smokestack, Everything Tobacco. Josh?
If you guys have any questions, feel free to direct them to thesmokestackpgh.com or ed at thesmokestackpgh.com.
Right.
And also keep an eye out where we've got a retail website in the works. It's going to be called Stack Cigars. We'll be able to sell you guys cigars if you're outside the area or if you want to buy cigars from the comfort of your own home. So we're on track to get that launched in March, so keep an eye out for that, guys. Thanks.